This is the Sideline Slice, presented by Valentino's Pizza, the official pizza of the Huskers. Here's your host, Jessica Coody, and Huskers Radio Network analyst, Jeremiah Sirles.
And we welcome you back into another edition of the Sideline Slice. I'm Jessica Coody with Jeremiah Sirles, and the Huskers in the win column. It was a squeaker at halftime, but pulling out in the end, 38-17 over North Dakota. Hey, Sirles, you can never complain about a W, right?
No, you take the wins when you can get them. I mean, that's just what you need to do because they're hard. Winning is hard. It's not an easy thing to do, which as Husker fans, we have realized over the past decade that it's a tough thing to do. So I'm never going to complain about a win. The greatest thing about a win is it makes corrections so much easier in the film room. When you're not looking at a correction going, man, that one play might have been the difference between a win and a loss, right? Or that one mistake or that one turnover or whatever it might be, you can carry a lot of guilt and a lot of pressure on yourself as a player when it's like, man, that might have been why we lost. But when you win, it's a lot easier to get in the film room and make corrections and be like, hey, we won, but this has to get fixed if we want to continue to win.
We're going to dive into a few things here, but let's start with one of the things that you said needed to improve was the run game, and the run game was improved, over 200 yards rushing in Anthony Grant. So what did you see out of him? He was pretty impressive on a few of those runs.
Oh, jump cut Anthony? Man, that dude is special. That jump cut's fun to watch. Yeah, I think that, we saw some flashes of that at the spring game, obviously, right? And then I saw some flashes of that in the scrimmage, and you saw even some of it last week. I mean, he had a good amount of running against Northwestern too, but you really got to see him come into his own this week. And I think that when you have a complete back, which I think Grant's a complete back, I think comparison-wise, you look back at when did Nebraska last time have a back that could run between the tackles, he could bounce it outside, and he still had the home run threat hit of speed. I think back to almost Divino Zigbo, right, who was playing in the NFL. I think we've had a combination of those guys, right? We've had a scat back, and then we've had a power back, and then we've had kind of a really fast back, but we haven't had a combination complete back since Ozigbo. And I think that Grant brings that to the table for us. And anytime you can have a running back like that, that really is going to elevate your offense to have a chance at being a dominant run football game because, he's one guy of making one guy miss and being able to take the to the distance and put 6 on the board.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're a team that right now that's preparing for Nebraska, and you saw the first week they threw it all over the place, last week they ran it. I mean, what does that do for an offense that probably wants to throw the ball quite a bit to have a running back that you can call on in that kind of situation? For me, I hope that it goes more along the lines of we switch it more to a run first offense, and that's the O lineman in me, right? The run the damn ball guy. But when you have a back like that, you want to get him in a rhythm early in a game. And so if you can say, hey, we want to get Anthony Grant in a rhythm early, we want to get him confidence early in the football game so that he can grow, right? You saw him grow in strength as the game went on. And that's really when you have a special back. When you see him in the fourth quarter, he's delivering the blows to the linebackers. He's delivering the blows to the safeties. And they're chasing him down, and he grows stronger as the game goes on. Well, you got to get him started early. And so I think that'll give Whipple confidence in the offensive staff, like, hey, let's start the game with some more runs possibly so we can get this back going, and then we can sprinkle in the pass. Versus if you come out slinging the rock all over and then Grant gets kind of a slow start, he might not be even hitting stride until late third, fourth quarter when you want him hitting stride as quickly as possible. So I think this can give some confidence to the run game for Coach Whipple and staff there, and I hope that it gives some confidence to the offensive line too because you have a horse back there. You want to block well for him because you know that one block that you make could be the difference between a negative play or 6 points. And you and I have been high on the freshman A.J. Allen from the first time we saw him in practice. I think it's safe to say that guy is not going to redshirt this year.
I wouldn't assume so. I think that that's a guy that you have certain people that you're like, maybe we'll redshirt, but there's some guys you're just like, he's too talented. He's going to help us win. And when you need to win and you're in a season where winning is at a premium right now for Coach Frost's staff and this entire state, really, you need every contributor you can on the field. It doesn't matter if he's 18, it doesn't matter if he's 22 or anywhere in between. If he can contribute in a big way and help win and put points on the board, you're going to see him on the field on Saturdays.
Okay, so let's dive into, some of the issues, because at halftime, Scott Frost, when I interviewed him, he said he was very unhappy with the offense, disappointed in the offense in the first half, but they couldn't really get the ball. And you had talked about this going into the Northwestern game about those short passes and, kind of keeping the Nebraska offense off the field. So what did you see in that regard and what North Dakota was doing, and how can that be combated?
Yeah, we can look back all the way, Jessica, to Purdue last year. I think Purdue last year is a team that I remember watching that game going, man, this is kind of a blueprint of how to get after this Husker defense a little bit, which is the quick passing game. We talk about the pass rushers that we have, and Chin's talked about it in his press conference last week, like you have to earn the right to rush the passer on first and second down. Well, teams are just going to take that away from you when they're just going to dink and dunk you for 3 yards, 4 yards, 7 yards, and all of a sudden you're kind of skipping some third downs. Or if you're in third down, it's in 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3 and manageable. And, there's a couple reasons that are behind that. And, again, I'm just kind of speculating from former experience here. When you're getting short passes thrown at you as a defense, there's a couple ways to combat that. Number one, DBs, you got to play tighter. Linebackers, you got to play tighter on these guys out front. You got to press them. You got to get in their face a little bit, and you got to play tighter coverage, right? If it's a 1st and 10, you got to be up in their face so that they can't complete an easy 5-yard slant and live in 2nd and 5, right? Get up there and challenge them at the line. The other piece of it is if they're a quick passing game, sometimes as a coordinator, and I think Chins can get frustrated because he's not getting home with the pass rushers just because the ball's out so quick, that you start dialing up some pressure. And when you dial up pressure and you're sending 5 or you're sending 6 even, you have to play zone coverage on the back end. When you play zone coverage, you're obviously just going to be a little more soft in coverage because you have one less guy back there covering. And that can open up some holes in the zone for the quick hook curls or the quick slants or the quick seam routes over the middle. So it's just something that this Husker defense is going to have to get figured out because, like anything, there's good coaches in this league. There's good coaches in all around college football. And it's like the NFL. It's a copycat league. Until you show that you can stop something, you're going to continually get tested at it. And that goes all the way from offense and defense to individually as a player to if you put something on tape, people are going to keep testing you on it. And so I think we're going to continue to see teams want to try and short passing game us to neutralize guys like Garrett Nelson, O'Shawn Mathis, Caleb Tanner, of allowing them to pin their ears back and go and just frustrate them even more too. So it's something we're really going to have to figure out here. And I don't have a crystal ball answer for you, but I hope that Chins and those guys are really working on that because it's not the last time we're going to see it.
And then, obviously, there's some concerns with the missed tackling. We heard the players talk about it. We heard Coach Frost talk about it. Going to do some more one-on-ones this week in practice. But when that's an issue with some players, how do you fix that? How is that fixed quickly?
I don't know, and that's a tough thing. Being an offensive guy, I can't say I've ever been somewhere that's been like, oh man, we got to tackle better, right? I have
You've never been
tackles.
A tackler?
I've had like 3 tackles my entire career, and one of them I dislocated my shoulder. So I'm not exactly the person to talk to about how to form tackle someone, But I have been on teams that have struggled to tackle, and there's really no quick fix to it. And I think that you're seeing it, and Nebraska is not the only team this is plagued by. I watched a lot of college football this weekend. There was missed tackles all over the place. This can go all the way back to just the lack of time and the lack of tackling in fall camp. And, you don't want to tackle in fall camp because you don't want to get guys injured. But then when the real bullets start flying, it's almost impossible to just assume that people are going to be able just to go out there and just tackle it a million miles an hour, right, at full speed. So you want to see growth in that. And I think that the hardest part for Husker Nation, and you and I even, was I didn't see a ton of growth from Northwestern to North Dakota in the missed tackling phase, right? I kind of gave some grace against Northwestern. I was like, okay, it's week 0. We're getting ourselves into it. But when it was basically equivalent to Northwestern, or maybe even a little worse than Northwestern with the tackling this week, that's a tad concerning. So I really am going to be focusing on that watching this Georgia Southern team because there's some really good athletes on this Georgia Southern team. So this guy's really got to wrap up. You can't have missed tackles. When you have a guy wrapped up in the backfield for a TFL, you can't miss that tackle. But it also comes down to all other 10 guys rallying to the football. There was times that I saw guys rallying to the football really well for gang tackling. Other times it was like there's a missed tackle and there was no one else around, almost like people assumed that guy was going to make the tackle. You can't assume on defense that one guy is going to bring a guy down. It's got to be tackled by committee. So more guys running to the football is going to help with the missed tackling because there's going to be more bodies around, and really just continuing to get more live reps at it over and over and over again before we head into Oklahoma.
I do think that Saturday was a good chance to get some guys some experience. Hey, no Travis Vokolek, no Nick Henrich. And so you had some guys that were filling in some roles that at least you got them some experience, which that's going to pay dividends moving forward. Don't you think that, hey, if this happens again, now we got some guys that have some game reps and they got a feel for it. Now you got to grow from it and get better from it.
Yeah, and, I think Ernest Hausman played well. I think he played fairly well for getting your first meaningful snaps. He had a couple missed tackles, but I thought he played fast. I didn't think he played timid, and that's what you want to see when a young guy gets his opportunities. But, man, you can tell we miss Vokolek. You can tell that Casey Thompson wants his 6'6", 260-pound mattress to throw into, right? I mean, when you have a guy that big, he's just a safety blanket as a quarterback, and you saw it against Northwestern. And you really want to get that guy back, and I hope that he can be back this week, if not, but hopefully 100% for Oklahoma. And then, you talk about getting some guys game reps. It's always good to have your depth players get some meaningful reps so that come November when we're playing Minnesota and Michigan and Wisconsin and Iowa, that if that's when they're getting their first reps, then they're not shell-shocked, right? They've had some experience to it. So you never want to see guys get hurt. You never want to see guys get dinged. But at the same time, early in the season, it's good to get those guys reps. You just like to hopefully get those guys reps because we're beating North Dakota by 60 in the third quarter, and then you can put all those backups in there and get meaningful reps, not just because guys are hurt.
I do think Vokolek, I think you're going to have a hard time keeping him off the field for Oklahoma. So I think he'll be back.
Yeah.
He is pretty adamant that he'll be back, but obviously don't want to rush it either because then could be an injury that lingers. So hopefully he'll be back in the next couple of weeks. All right, and then one of the other things that was talked quite a lot about is just that this offense has a lot of new parts and a lot of new coaches and a lot of new pieces, a lot of new players that are trying to figure each other out. Have you been a part of that situation, and what goes into getting that rhythm, that consistency, that familiarity with each other? And I know it's game after game after game, but especially when, and they don't want to look ahead to Oklahoma, but especially when we as fans, we as media are saying, hey, we got a big one coming up in a week. So how do you kind of, I guess, push the accelerator on that process?
It's got to happen in practice. You can't hope that, we'll just get to the games and figure it out. Like, it has to happen in practice. You have to practice at full speed. You have to practice at game speed, or else you're never going to be in sync. And that goes from everyone from the offensive line to the quarterback to the running back, because we talk about Grant. Like, if Grant's not seeing full speed reps in practice, he's not going to have the patience, or he's not going to have the trust of, like, that's where the hole is, make sure I press the hole, right? If he's getting to the hole quicker in the game because the O-line's not going as fast, like, it just doesn't mix well. Timing is everything on offense, how quickly you hit the hole. Okay, is it a 9-step out route, or is it an 11-step out route? Like, you have to do it at game speed 100 times over and over and over again, and that starts in practice. So that's just going to continue to go. You just want to see that continuing to go as well. The other piece too is protection becomes a huge piece of that too when you're talking about timing for quarterbacks and receivers. If protection's breaking down, the timing's obviously going to be off. And there was time where protection broke down not great, or it wasn't great at times versus North Dakota. So the protection's got to get better too in order to keep that passing game rhythm, which we want to do and Whipple wants to do. But in order to have the quick passing and to have the timing passing game, the protection's got to hold up better.
Valentino's has been a Nebraska tradition since 1957. Get the big red double jumbo deal. 2 one-topping jumbo pizzas for only $18.29 each.
All right, let's talk Georgia Southern and what you know about them and what needs to happen for the Huskers in this game, before heading into that Oklahoma week.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. It's going to be very similar to this week in the fact that it is a lesser, and I say lesser with no disrespect to Georgia Southern, it's a lesser opponent. Now, I will say this, there is way, way, way better athletes on this Georgia Southern team than we saw last week against North Dakota. For example, we all know the quarterback, Kyle Van Treese. He played for Buffalo last year. He had a tough day against the Huskers last year. He went 24 for 50, 224 yards and a pick. So he didn't light the scoreboard on us, and we beat the crap out of Buffalo last year. So he's going to remember that. He doesn't. He don't. People don't forget, But then you also talk about they have a really good receiver in Amari Jones, who is an NFL prospect, right? So this is going to be kind of the first NFL prospect on the edges that our DBs are going to see, right? So Tommy Hill, Quentin Newsome, all those guys, like, hey, go make your medal and don't let this guy have a bunch of catches, right? Shut him down. Make someone else beat you on the edge versus allowing this guy to go out there and have a field day. And so those are kind of the two guys on offense. On defense, this is just going to be a team that's going to be really athletic and run the ball. This is a team that I'd like to see us be able to get after and running the football with. I think if we can get after them and Grant, like I talked about earlier, in a rhythm, then we can keep that offense off the field and we can really just kind of control the clock and control this game. That's what I want to see. Last week we won by 21, yes. But Jessica, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I don't feel like we had control of that game until the fourth quarter. And you have to have control of these football games for 4 quarters, right? You have to control the tempo. You have to control the pace, control the momentum, because that's what you should do against opponents like this. And it's important for you to learn as a team how to control a football game so that when you're getting and you're playing against the higher Michigans and you're playing against the Illinois, the Indianas, whoever in the Big Ten, that it's not new, right? You have to understand how to control a football game, especially when you have a lead. And so I'd like to see Nebraska come out and control this football game for 60 minutes, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to lead for 60 minutes, but even if you fall behind 7-10 or whatever it is, you still feel like you're in control.
Right.
So that's what I really want to see from this Nebraska team against Georgia Southern, is just a control factor.
Yeah, and I think too, and for this team too, and it seemed like that kind of was a little bit for some of these players. Hey, did we come out and play exactly how we wanted to play? No. But you take the win, you take the positives from it, and you can't get hung up on Northwestern. You can't get hung up on North Dakota. You got to just keep moving forward and keep putting those positives together to keep growing as a football team. And I think we as fans too, hey, close the chapter. Those 2 games are in the rearview mirror, and I know we like to talk about it, but let's see how they make improvements this week, because that's what you got to do. You just got to keep improving.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this is a confident Georgia Southern football team that's come in here. They just won 59-7 last week. Granted, it was against Morgan State of just deaf and blind. But, I think that this is not going to be a team that's going to come in here intimidated. I think they're going to watch the tape from last week and be like, okay, North Dakota came in there and challenged these guys on their home turf. We can do the same. It's going to be up to the Huskers to say, no, that's not how this works, right? This is our house. This is our field. We defend our home. We come in. We control. We beat you. Right? That's what it has to be. You can't let a team like this hang around like we did with North Dakota. We have to go from the rip and go and just control this game from 60 minutes from start to finish and not give them a chance to breathe.
All right, quickly, players to watch.
I'm gonna go with our 2 tackles. I think that last week Teddy Prohaska and Bryce Benhart had struggled at times. I'd like to see how they bounce back. I'd like to see how they bounce back, not just in protection, but in the run game, and see how they kind of get out there, and like to see their physicality more on displays. Both those guys are mountain of humans. I mean, they're bigger than I am, right? I stand next to those 2 guys, and I feel like shrimps.
You do. You look tiny.
I do. They tower over me.
And when have you ever been told you look tiny?
Right? And so I want to see them use that physicality, use that big body, get out there and throw some dudes around, right? I'm watching. All I do is watch the offensive line. That's what I do. And I want to see those 2 guys really get after people. Really get after people, right?
I'm shocked.
Shocker there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I really want to see Nash Hutchman continue to grow off of what I thought was a pretty solid performance. He had some good disruptive stuff in the middle, the nose tackle. I want to see him really continue to disrupt and him to grow more confidence. As a young player, after losing Daniels last year and not having him in there, that's a big spot to fill with how well he played. And I thought he took strides from Northwestern to this week. Continue to watch him take strides and continue to get better, because if we can have a nose guard that can eat up the guard in the center and keep those linebackers free to go make some tackles, that's going to pay huge dividends for this offense moving forward.
My biggest takeaway from this podcast is that you are not a good tackler or expert tackler.
I'm a horrible tackler. I tackled one guy against Northwestern, and I dislocated my shoulder. In the NFL, I tackled one because Nate Peterman threw his 70th pick of the year, and I tackled a guy from Chicago, and I ended up getting staph on my arm from a turf burn. So, no, I am not a good tackler.
Oh, Okay, that's awesome. All right, well, we'll let you get out of here, and we'll do it again next week, going into a massive week, going into Oklahoma. So appreciate it. For Jeremiah Sirles, I'm Jessica Coody. This is the Sideline Slice, presented by Valentino's Pizza, the official pizza of the Huskers.
Go Big Red.
Family traditions mean great food. With treasured Italian family recipes passed down for generations, Valentino's has become Nebraska's classic Italian tradition for 65 years.